I tell people sometimes over the years you can lose the magic a little bit, and forget just how cool it is when it's all about, rent and materials and the next piece of equipment you need to buy and just all the things that go along with it. You kind of lose that whole, like, I don't know, like the awe and wonder the first time you saw somebody push a mushroom marble.
This is the Wise Guy Radio Show, a podcast dedicated to educating and inspiring through conversations with today's top talents in the world of glass. We will be dissecting their journeys in hopes to deliver actionable content that you, the artist, can start implementing now, helping you grow not only as a creative spirit, but also a successful artistic entrepreneur. With a little organization, relationship building, and your artistic ability, you can obtain greatness. Climb aboard, whether an artist, retail owner, or enthusiast. We have a ton of fun in store for you. Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show. Hey, what's up? Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show, episode number 88. This is Jay Michael, your host. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm as excited as always to bring you conversations with artists, sharing their stories and hopes to inspire and entertain while helping you grow your business. Today's episode is a kind of backwards, forwards, kind of reverse and around kind of gimmick. It's last one was the 89, and I fucked up and don't know why. Maybe I was sick, not sure, but either way, I said it was 89 when it should have been 88, and this should be 89, which is now 88. So to keep all my numbers in check, this is 88. Going to backtrack. So today is our guest artist episode featuring DaddyO Glass, Travis Tyler, outside here in Tampa. He's right a stone's throw across the water from where I live. He's been behind the torch for a long, long time, and I'm just excited to share his story. He's got some cool techniques he's been doing lately, some fun work. And having him on the show as a Florida artist, he has gone through what I've gone through with the experience of having to compete with the import and the fact that we are a tourist-based finance kind of state. And because of that, for the longest time, up until probably about 5 years ago, the majority of the glass that we had to make out of here and sell to actually make a living was your cheap production kind of stuff, the whole China beaters pieces. Even though if I myself had a distributor, he also did the same kind of deals. But we've all been kind of struggling over the years dealing with that. And now that the Florida scene's really grown to where it's at, and also with social media and what have you, it's truly changed the landscape of the glass industry for us here in Florida. So it's fun to go through with him and talk about that and share his story and what he's been up to as well. I want to let you guys know, too, before I forget, that Mountain Glass right now is holding their Get It Quick sale, which started on March 9th and runs through March 11th. And that's 2016, so if you're listening to this in 17 or 2050, it doesn't matter. But right now they're offering their quartz sale. You can get 20% off. Just put the code in QUARTZ at checkout, QUARTZ, and you can get 20% off their rods and tubing. And then for all you soft glass nerds out there, they have their jewelry making essentials kits and stuff going on at 25% off. Just put in the code JEWELRY, JEWELRY, at checkout, and you can get 25% off their jewelry making essentials. Just go to mountainglass.com, and you can take care of all that. And also, don't forget, for everybody out there who's interested in getting started and would like to start, or interested in what kits cost, or if you're teaching classes and you need kits for your classes, you can just go to mountainglass.com/wiseguy. And right there is a link that'll send you to the kit page where you can then receive a discounted price on the kits and also an additional 5% off for putting in the word wise guy at checkout. So go do that if you can. They've also got some new tools. They've got some new glass joint holding tools made by Blast Shield. The new 12 mil female and male tools. Since it seems like everything's going to that now, between the 14 and the 10s, we now have a 12. Kind of interesting. They've got some high volume oxygen concentration systems on sale. Paragon kilns. Again, March 15th, they're raising their prices. So if you want a kiln in the meantime, definitely jump on it before the 15th to save some money on that. And other than that, I think it's time for us to get on the show. Just wanted to real quickly discuss, though, before I do, this talk right now going on in our industry about the cadmium colors and the concern it's raising in the Northwest with potential issues with the water and the chemicals leaching into the ground, into the water systems. As we all have heard through the past couple weeks with Detroit and their issues up there with the water systems and having lead in the water. And it's kind of horseshit when it comes down to it with them, because it was more or less a government fallback with them cutting corners and trying to make things as cheap as possible. But with this case for us, it seems to be a little bit more kind of an industry issue between the color companies and also other companies out there that manufacture glass that has cadmium, because the EPA has found high levels of cadmium in the environment. There hasn't been really threats to shut down, but I think that the companies who are closing those particular batches right now or stopping the production are taking a kind of a preemptive strike in a sense, without having to be forced to shut down. But my thought, I guess, to kind of summarize all this is, I think because of the growth of our industry and because of all these new colors that are coming out, I am concerned that potentially these companies aren't going through the process of truly testing the issues that could come up with the toxins and heavy metal and toxins and all kind of stuff, in terms of what the glass is made of. I would hope that they do, and I'm only saying this, again, my opinion. I don't really know for facts, but I definitely want to figure some stuff out and communicate with these companies if I can, if they're up for it, and really find out what's going on, because the cadmium colors, the crayon colors, which is what it is in Boro from Glass Alchemy, has been a staple for a lot of us for a long, long time, and they were really implemental into getting these colors out there, and along with North Star and their cadmium colors too. But the crayon colors are probably the most popular out there in the Boro world for the cadmium colors. So just know, again, for those that don't know if you heard the episode or not, but myself, back at the end of last year before Christmas, I had a full blood work done, urinalysis, what have you, for all the heavy metal toxins I could be exposed to, only because we had just moved into our new studio space and our ventilation was all done and what have you, and I wanted to really make sure everything was good. So I immediately went to my doctor appointment right after I got done working a full day. And after my tests were done, I came back negative, more or less, across the board. So that's good news. So again, I guess when it comes down to any and all of this, those of us that use these materials in general, no matter what it is, you got to make sure your ventilation is good. Ventilation, and also proper airflow coming in the studio that's not affecting your ventilation and also giving you fresh air. It's the most important, but I think what the root of all this really is coming down to is the environmental impact that the manufacturing process of these colors is having. Again, water systems and whatever else. So stay tuned for that, and we'll all stay tuned to the social media feeds and what have you. I know Abe Fleischman recently posted that he's going to be coming out talking about it himself with North Star's situation and their cadmium production. So until then, we will see you guys soon. I'm getting the hell out of here. I had a great workout today. I'm feeling energized, and it's a beautiful day in Florida, and it's time for me to get my ass in the studio. If anybody's going to be in Jacksonville or lives in Jacksonville area this week, I will be up there on the 12th at Lifted Designs Smoke Shop. They have a studio in there. I'll be working in there, getting some glass done and doing some collabs with some of the guys locally there and the artists that are residents to the shop. Pretty pumped about that, so definitely come check me out. I'll be there doing a demo. I believe it starts at 5 o'clock, and they have free beer and snacks and food. I'll have a whole parliament of wise guys I'm bringing up there, including some new rigs I'm doing, some new turtles and what have you. It's just some new product lines and fun stuff, so check that out. And also, if you're not aware, Zen Glass is holding their pendant Palooza. This is the second year they're doing it, and I will not be able to be there this year because, again, I'm being in Jacksonville. But last year was a lot of damn fun. So this year they're holding it on March 12th. You can just go to zenglass.com. You can look up there, and you can also purchase pendants that they have in the gallery show. They'll be available for sale, and anybody locally in the Florida area that wants to come in and see that show, March 12th on Saturday it's going on. They're going to have a shit ton of artists there selling pendants, and you get to meet and handshake and all that good stuff if you've ever wanted to meet the local Florida artists. So there you guys go. Putting some free plugs in there for you guys. Hope you all enjoy. Love you. I'm out of here. Episode 88 with DaddyO Glass. Talk to you guys soon. Oh, yeah, and go to wiseguymedia.com. wiseguymedia.com. WYZGUI media.com. wiseguymedia.com. It'll be your host for everything. All right, peace. What's going on, Travis? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. Just getting the day going.
Hell yeah, man. Thanks for coming on board. Fellow Florida native here. Well, I guess not a native, but in a sense, a glass artist here, and just on the other side of the bay. from myself here, kind of a stone's throw away. And it's honor to have you on, man. I've followed your work for a long, long time since you kind of came into this area through the guys at Zen and everything else.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. So it's been a lot of fun watching your transitions and your evolution of your work, especially what you're doing now, which I definitely want to get into. But before we go to all that stuff, if you want to give us a background on where you got started, who introduced you to the torch, and that point in time where you just felt like this was going to be it.
Sure. I moved from Florida to Arcata, California, up in Humboldt County in roughly, I want to say the end of 1998, I think it was. And was up there for a little while and ran into Bob Snodgrass at a hog farm festival down south from Arcata, and he told me about the classes that he was giving, and it sounded like a great, neat, fun thing. Of course, into the scene that we were all into at that time. That was new music to my ears, so to speak, just something that I could make some money at in the glass scene and that sort of thing. And so I went up there for a weekend and stayed with them and came back to my shop and just immediately got started. That was in January of 2000 that I got started, and worked there for a couple years, and ended up through all of the years ended up back here in Florida. And I've been in Tampa, and so I've been working glass in Florida for about the last 14 years now in the same general area. Orlando for a couple years, and then back to Tampa. But yeah, I got my start out there. Ended up after the classes with Snodgrass, through a friend of a friend, met a guy who was working with Chameleon Glass. And he introduced me to production work and spoons and that sort of thing, and really helped me kind of get my speed down and consistency and that sort of thing. And I made wrap and rake red, gold, and green Rasta spoons for Chameleon for many years, more than anybody should ever have to look at. But it really, like I say, I credit that to pretty much any good trait that I have now came from that guy and that experience, just because everything had to be so perfect. They were very, for lack of a better term, very anal retentive about the quality and consistency. And so I got to where I could crank out a lot of pieces that looked exactly the same, and very particular about bowl holes and carb placement and just all of these things that really fine-tuned my skills and got me to where I could do things on purpose instead of a lot of happy accidents or bad accidents.
Yeah.
But so that's where I cut my teeth, so to speak, and was doing work for Chameleon, and then ended up back in here in Orlando, and worked in several different shops in town, one by myself and one with another cat, and yeah, just forged some friendships with shops and local folks, and have been here ever since.
Hell yeah. So I think it's myself personally, which I'm sure you do too, like to have that foundation, and production sucks, but you got to do it, in a sense to really, I think, muscle memory and learning your medium, learning your tools and equipment, certain tools you may or may not want to use. It's just such a, that have that facet of a foundation is such an important deal. And,
maybe it's, yeah, I was going to say maybe it's, selling myself short, but I feel that I wouldn't be anything without that foundation.
Yeah.
That really, I can't tell you how many pieces I've seen out there with, 20 different spiral sections and this and that's on them, and then it's got a janky bowl hole.
Right.
So yeah, it's I think it's very important for people. A lot of folks want to skip that step now, and some can. There's no doubt that some people can skip that, but I think for the most part, it would behoove anyone who's getting into this industry to start with some sort of production line to really get their skill set down before they jump into bigger, more complex work.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder too, on that same kind of topic with, the bowl pushing. When I teach myself, I'm always teaching that it doesn't matter what it is you're making, as long as your bowl hole and your carb hole and your bowl hole inside the bowl is on point. It don't matter what the fuck this thing looks like, and it's
that's true.
And with the way of the cannabis industry, in a sense, that's where it's gone to the concentrates. I know there's still a huge amount of us, including myself, that still appreciate and prefer the traditional flowers.
Sure.
And so, but it makes me kind of curious if the technique of actually going through the process of pushing a perfectly clean bowl is going to go by the wayside, or if like that's going to be like a lost technique, even though it won't be. But you know what I mean? It's kind of interesting to think of. I haven't really thought about it that way yet, and it's kind of. I kind of wonder because, like, even like the joints, like everything's evolved over the years from the 14 millimeter to 10 mil to males now the 14 females again to the banger hangers and whatever. And even that's not the easiest thing to do, but it's still, to me, I think it's probably easier to make a female joint than it is to make a perfectly placed bowl and bowl push and hole and a card placement.
Well, I think that there's a lot of other things that you get also just from practicing that. And one thing is, if you, for instance, put hopefully you're not doing this, but if you put a downstem in something or a fitting or what have you, and the fitting is just a hair off, or the tube on the inside tends to lean to one side a little bit. There are little variances that you can get away with.
Mm-hmm.
When you push a bowl, if your bowl hole is not round, you cannot get away with that. It forces you to learn how to fix things. It forces you to be able to heat that whole section up, put a rod in and pull the whole thing back out and have to rework and re-blow the hole and redo all of that. I believe it was Lauren Stump that once said a glass blower is only good as what they can fix or cover up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so it gives you a lot of practice to rework things, to make things perfect. And of course, you can get that through other things. I'm not saying you have to do that to have those traits, but it helps, I think.
Yeah,
and,
I agree.
For old cats like us, it's never going to go by the wayside, man.
Right.
That's, for me, that is glass pipe making, is pushing a bowl.
Yeah, exactly.
I love everything else, don't get me wrong, but that's where I'm from, the school that I'm from, and that's what I'll always love to do, for sure.
Yeah. And I think too, like the way I teach the process is the beginning of pulling points, and a lot of people, there's still the debate on whether you should pull points or not. And I think everybody needs to learn how to pull points. There's so much involved that you learned just from working tubing, but then you get into the actual process of making a spoon, and to be able to pop a hole that when you go to heat it back up, you can always tell if your glass is too thin because it'll open up really big, or if it's too thick, it closes up immediately. So by being able to pop a nice, perfect hole the first time, it really allows you to fine-tune your consistency and your thickness of the bowl head itself, of what you're going to be pushing your bowl into, or whatever the area is. So it's almost like trying to go out and drive a stick shift and not using the clutch properly or some shit, trying to like correlate the idea. But it's definitely, I think it's such an important thing. And even just taking a piece of 12 mil and blowing a ball and then popping a hole in the top and pushing a bowl like it's an old school slide. It's like those little techniques. Like my assistant right now is learning that process. We may not ever use the stuff he's making right now, but down the road when he's helping me do my production spoons and stuff, he's going to need to learn how to do that shit.
Yeah.
And it's just such an important technique. So it's interesting to kind of see the new school guys that are bypassing the spoon completely and going into more of the bigger, declines even.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, you see guys who have been at it 3 months and they're making a climb, and more power to people or whatever. But I think anyone who's going to dedicate themselves to pipe making as a craft or art form, or however you want to look at it, and is going to be serious about it, should want to learn everything they can. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be a bypass moment. And we all understand the reasoning they do that. There's more money to be made in that. It's just a different world right now, but you should really want to have as many tools in your tool bag as you can possibly have. Mm-hmm. And those beginning or quote unquote beginner type things, they really do, to use the word again, they lay the foundation for everything else you do. And like I say, going back to working with Chameleon, it had to be so consistent with my work that it really got me to be, again, for lack of a better term, just anal retentive about all of my work. Everything just had to be really clean, really perfect. And once I stopped working with Chameleon, all of those traits stuck with me. Mm-hmm. So I was very much a perfectionist and a technician in that sense, and wanted to to have all of that right, and when it went into spiral work after that, and all of my spirals had to be really right. And if there was a termination that wasn't just so, I might scrap a piece I'd been working on for 45 minutes or an hour plus, just
Yeah.
because that part wasn't right, and I would move on to the next one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
and so and that in turn helps you to get that down faster because, geez, you don't want to be throwing away, 2 or 3 out of 4 or 5 of the sections you're making. So you get really proficient at that really quick. It all just stacks up like a wall of bricks, like, and each one is helping you get to the next one and to have that foundation to lay the next one on top of. So I wish people would focus more on some of those beginning steps, even if they weren't going to be production spoon makers or something. Just spend that first 4 or 5, 6 months to a year just making production stuff and be the best production maker you can be, and prepare yourself to step into the next realm and be the best at that you can be, not just how much can you produce or how much money can you make today, but really focusing on being, if you're going to make a spoon, make the best freaking spoon that's out there.
Yeah.
If you're going to make a Klein, make the best Klein that's out there. And we all fall short in that. I'm not saying that I do that at every step or anything, but I think that's a good goal to keep in mind for everyone at all times. It's just,
Yeah, I agree.
don't forget the basics.
Yeah, I guess too, in terms of like the world of business in a sense too. Like they would talk about a niche and finding your niche, and it's I find with our community and our industry now, finding your niche as a pipe maker, but finding your niche and what your thing is a good thing to do. But then once you find your thing, you got to really fine tune that thing and even niche it down even further, and then like you're saying, then become the best at that specific thing. And just stick with it and work with it. And you can, move around a little bit in your lines, but to be able to really fine tune and hone in on that specific thing it's crucial to become successful down the road. It's not the success now. It's that whole, I'm an overnight success, but it took me 10 years.
Yeah.
Kind of concept. It's fascinating. So when you started, from the production line with Chameleon, you came to Florida in 2002. Did you continue to do production for them? Like, were you selling stuff out the mail?
Not at that point. I ended up going back I came up with I got a sandblaster when, I don't know, maybe 2003 or 4, something like that, and came up with a couple spoons for their catalog, some sandblasted styles. And they introduced them to the catalog, and they did very, very well. And so I made those for them for several years, as well as just working on the side for shops around here and that sort of thing. So I did stop the wrap and rake spoons whenever I left, and then ended up going back to them with these sandblasted style for a couple years. But yes, I've worked with them, a couple times in the past for sure, and great people, and gave me a good hand getting started with everything. But those are the two things I did with them. But for the most part, I just kind of, like I say, honed my skills and worked with shops around here in the area. And that was really kind of prior to the whole huge internet thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was much more of a local game at that point. It was establishing your name in your community, and it was all walk-in sales and word of mouth and that kind of stuff, as opposed to being online and, shopping yourself out to everyone on the planet.
Yeah. It's I'm glad that, to bring you on as well, because you're the first Florida artist besides myself on here. And it seems like nationally wise, there's not a whole lot of understanding of what we have had to go through over the past 15 years plus, because the Florida scene that back then really didn't exist. And if it did exist, it was such a small, tight-knit community. I mean, there may have been like maybe 10 of us in the whole state at the time that were pipe makers that I'm aware of. There might have been more, but we still had the Mickelsons and some of the guys here in Florida that were phenomenal glass artists, but they weren't in the pipes yet. Yeah. And we were. And then so it's interesting to understand like the communities around the country that have grown together, like the Colorados and the Eugenes and the Californias and those kind of places, even up in Philly and the Northeast. they had their communities where they all kind of stuck together and they learned from each other. But like yourself and me and a couple of the guys around here, we were kind of secluded to ourselves in our own little studio space, not really reaching out to each other because, in all honesty, we really didn't know we existed until maybe 5 years ago or so, maybe a little bit longer than that. So it's interesting to see how we've evolved ourselves as we've had to deal with everything from trying to sell our work, trying to deal with distributors and wholesalers, trying to deal with the laws here. And then Operation Pipe Dream comes in and they fuck everything else up. And then Florida starts trying to ban pipes, period, which put it all up in this whole uproar. And that was even before the internet started really blowing up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fucked up in the sense that we've had to like scrape our knees several times over the past more than a decade to get to where we're at now. And a lot of us, including myself and you too, I'm sure if we lived out in the Californias or the Colorados and we were involved in those communities, financially, we would probably be way more successful. Our glass would probably be even better than what we're doing now. But we've evolved. I mean, I think that, we're some of the guys out there that have really had to work our ass off to get to where we're at. And now we can sit back a little bit. Not much, but we can still sit back and look at the scene now and how the Florida scene is, and the Florida scene now is huge.
Yeah, it's 100% different. You're right. Whenever I came back here, I met up with I was working with one cat in his studio there in Orlando, Dave Rao, and we were next to Sean Vincent, Ben Lipkin, a few other kind of local cats up there, and all sort of hanging out together and that kind of thing. But there wasn't a lot of it was just a different time. I mean, Glasswork Park was such a big deal because it was so many cool glass blowers working together.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't a lot of that going on anywhere, frankly. This was still the time of, I remember whenever I first started, you could walk into certain shops, and no joke, the second you walked in the shop, whatever they were working on immediately went in the kiln. The torches were turned off. And it wasn't kicking back on until you walked out the door to leave. It was still somewhat a secretive kind of, thing. There was not this great sharing everything like there is now. Even the guy who got me into Chameleon to begin with was like, dude, if my buddies knew I was teaching somebody right now, they'd all be ostracizing me. So, let's not go advertising this to everybody just yet. And so it was just a different thing. And then, I came to Florida and met up with the three kind of local cats there. And there were a couple more there in Orlando. But yeah, it was a different thing. People weren't getting together, like you say. It was very spread out. Florida is such a sparse state that a lot of times, if somebody wasn't right in your town, then they were probably at least a good 3-4 hours away, something like that. And again, at that time, it wasn't let's all travel the state and collab together and make these big pieces, and that just wasn't the market at that point, nor the mentality for everybody. So yeah, a lot of folks just kind of sat in their little garages and stayed secluded. And we would meet at different music festivals and things like that. And it wasn't like anybody had any ill will towards anybody or anything. It wasn't this big collab thing. So yeah, and then to top that off, when I was living there in Orlando, just to go back to what you were talking about during the Pipe Dreams era, even I can't remember if it was before that or after that. I want to say it was before, but Orlando has several different counties in it, and I forget which one. It was either Orange or Seminole. One or the other banned pipes, and the other one didn't. And so you could drive down one of the main roads there in Orlando, and on half of the street, on one side of the street, you could buy pieces, and on the other side of the street, you would go to jail if you had them. It was so bizarre. And a sketchy time to be a pipe maker around that era because, all the stores stopped buying things, and we all were pretty much figuring, well, here we go. I'm going to go work at fast food or something for the rest of my life because this is over.
Yeah.
But then, when I moved to Tampa, I ended up meeting Dave from Zen Glass at a music festival, Langerado, a friend of mine was putting on here in Florida for many years. And I met him at the first one. We were both had a vending booth. and kind of met up with him. And during that same time, one of the guys I was talking about earlier, Ben Lipkin, opened a gallery there in Orlando and had a little studio set up out back. And he was really supportive of, he's a lamp worker himself, and he was really supportive of the local guys, myself, Ray Olson, again, Sean Vincent, Dave Rao, all these cats that were just kind of around there at that time. And so it started to be a little bit more like what you see now as I was leaving Orlando. And yeah, it's finally, it's going crazy. Like you say, there were probably, 10 people in our little area at that time, and now there's, gosh, 10 people every 10 feet.
Yeah.
And a lot of good lamp workers too. But yeah, it's weird. Florida still does not seem to get, I don't know what it is about the state. It's always been a very bizarre state. I agree. Like you say, maybe it's the concentration in the other states of people in certain areas or something, but it's a hard state to break out in for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too, like the issues that we've had is being a industry of the state is based on tourism, and a lot of the shops around here before the import thing started happening, because the import I think affected us more than it did anybody else.
Oh yeah, well we're close to the ports.
Right? Yeah, totally. So like a lot of the shops around here, they wanted $5-10 wrap and rake spoons so they could sell them for $10 and $20. The more disposable shit. So you got to crank out 100 fucking pipes to really make any kind of money, or if you find a wholesaler that was going to buy 200 or 300 at a time, which still I'm still feeling that the issues from that today, from all the years of the heavy production I had to do to sustain myself.
Yep.
And then you fast forward to where we are now, and it seems like the culture here, the collectors and the purchasers, they're supporting not only us, but they're supporting a lot of the big guys in the country. There's some cats down South Florida that have a couple $100,000 glass collections that'll blow your fucking mind. And it's awesome to see that, how it's kind of spilled over, but it's still such a tight knit, closed kind of thing too. It's kind of weird.
It's very strange, and that may be the community at large. I don't get out as much as a lot of people, get to, and that's unfortunate. But I don't know if it's just our state or what have you. But it still is difficult to break out in this state, even as a Florida artist. And I don't know if that is just. Again, I don't know if it's the state. I don't know if it's the work. I don't know if it's, it may be all of the above, just all of the different factors that are going on. But it still seems to be a pretty difficult state to, I don't know, to break out in, because you do have this weird dynamic going on of a few stores who really carry high-end work and that sort of stuff. But a lot of them, I don't want to say a lot, many of them don't carry the more local guys. They carry a lot of the bigger names and the nice headwork and stuff, but not as much local work as you would expect to see. I don't want to act like they're not carrying any, but not as much as you would expect to see. And so it still seems to be a hard state, because you have that going on, and then you also still have, like we were talking about before, being this close to the ports. It seems like you can't throw a rock without hitting a gas station with a case at the front, or a shop that has the buy one get one free pieces that you could crush in your hand. They're so thin, or janky, or what have you. And so you've got that going on. So it's still, you do have pockets of those collectors, but it still does seem to be very much a disposable state in some ways, as far as what do you got in your case for $5? Well, nothing.
Yeah, and I mean,
I can't tell you how many silver fume $5 spoons I've made, just because of, like you say, it's been that way for so long.
Yeah, that was the demand.
Yeah,
I mean, I've more or less, I have one shop here locally that I've sold to recently, but other than that, I haven't sold glass locally in Pinellas County in probably 3 or 4 years, and it's only because the shops that I was selling to, they still want the same stuff that I was making them 10 years ago. And and they step it up a little bit, but it's hard to get a shop to want to spend $100 on a pipe.
Yeah, we definitely have some. I'll do a little bit of name dropping for these guys here. We do have some good ones here still. You've got your Forward and Pipe Dreams and Wooden Ship and Green Planet and Hot Box, a few others, that some of them that have been here for a long time. and have just cut a decent niche for themselves. Like I do
Yeah.
have some of the older customers around here that'll still buy, nicer pieces from me, as well as newer ones that's more their focus. But it does seem to be there is a difference between the long-standing shops and the new shops.
Mm-hmm.
The new shops are much more geared towards what's going on today, as far as the nicer, bigger, more interesting work, versus the shops that have been around for a long, long time and kind of came up in the same way that we did, who do still, one of those shops, for instance, without naming names, he still won't get on Instagram. They're kind of dinosaurs like us in that
Yeah.
sense. It's that part is all new to them, and so they just kind of stick with what they know and that sort of thing. And then you have the younger guys who have kind of latched on to what's going on in the community and see it as a really good. Not only do they like glass, but a good business opportunity and are into it in that sense.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny you say that because with like Colby down at It's All Good, he was the first person locally that introduced me to the West Coast glass that was coming over. He's like, look at this stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, how the hell they even do that? And I would go home and try to figure this shit out. But he still doesn't have a fucking computer. This dude's been carrying.
Why does that not surprise me?
I know, right? But it's so funny because he has had the highest end glass for a longest time. He's kind of phasing out of the whole retail side of things, I think. But he's one of those guys that has supported the industry and has been involved with it heavily, but still refuses to deal with anything technology. He's like, I don't even know how to run a computer, so I don't care.
Yeah.
Makes me laugh. But
well,
again,
and their formula works for them, and people like him and some of these other people I'm talking about, they're established to the point where they wouldn't necessarily have to do anything ever. They've just got the spot. People know about it. They've got the word of mouth. People are always going to come in there, but you would like to see them push it a little more because they have been. I like to see the people who have fought long and hard for it be able to progress, to move forward, to do better than you did last year, that kind of thing, or what have you. So,
do you find any shops that you deal with try to go to the exclusivity side? Like you can sell to us, but we prefer that you don't sell to the guy down the street, kind of bullshit.
Yeah, there are one or two out there, and without getting specific on that, I just basically tell folks if they bring that up, well, for me personally, it might be different if I was talking about a complete different state or something like that. But if it's in my community where I'm going to be most apt to, I need to sell a case of glass this week, where am I going to go? Well, I'm going to go here in my community versus trying to ship it out of state or what have you. So if they want me to cut off all ties kind of in my local area, I tell them, well, then you would have to buy everything I bring you. No ifs, ands, or buts. You're more than welcome to do that. But I cannot have my rent wait because you can't buy something this week.
Yeah.
If you can't buy something, I need to be able to go sell this to someone else. So, I would be into something like that. But most people, when you tell them that and then you tell them how much you can make per week, if it's that sort of thing, don't really want to get into that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
So they usually don't buy your stuff at all, which is what I've run into with a few shops around here, which is unfortunate, because they say they don't want to carry the same as everybody else. But when you look around, everybody's carrying the same stuff. I mean, it's just the local people that hurt from that, because you've got all the nationally known, you've got all the same people and that's wonderful. I want to see all of those people, but it's just, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. It's a weird market to break into if you're a local, if you're not on that huge national, kind of known sort of list. It's very difficult. But yeah, so anyway, I have run into that into a few spots, but not too much. Most people are usually pretty cool and they understand, hey, I usually also tell people, if you want, I've got a list of people that I call whenever I've got stuff ready. If you want to be on that list, I'll do that. And if you don't want it being sold to other people, buy it as soon as I contact you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Hell yeah.
And that seems to work pretty well for me. I've just got my list of folks. When I've got stuff sitting here before I start posting it on Instagram and things like that, I'll usually send out kind of a bulk email, and within a few minutes I have one or two people contacting me wanting to scoop it up. So that seems to work pretty well for me.
Hell yeah. Yeah, and the email is interesting too, because I find the shops are all about using email, but getting artists to start using their email, it's which is part of my show that I'm trying to focus on, is to the communication aspect, not just the using the messengers on the Facebooks and Instagrams and bullshit, but actually use your email. Like, your email is the most important communication thing that you have.
Right.
So I definitely agree with that, and keeping your shops in line.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of shops, they do have the emails where you'll call. In the old days, you would call, and I say the old days, whatever.
Yeah, it's true, though.
14, 15 years ago, something like that. You would just call people, hey, I've got a case of glass. You want it? Yes, come in, But now, like you say, each shop has 100 different glass blowers hitting them up every day, versus back then where you had one glass blower calling a week, and it was like, yeah, man, get in here. Show me what you got. Let's get some variety. Now they've got more variety than they can shake a stick at, so you really have to just kind of pop in, or it seems very difficult to call and set up a stop-in sale sort of thing anymore.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of to back up a little bit too. So when you got into Florida and you got yourself established here and you started doing your production lines and whatever, did you get any kind of other education in the glass world wise, like taking classes from artists?
No, the only classes that I've really taken as far as a formal class, I did a weekend class with Snotty at his place, 2 days there. I've done a 2-day one-on-one with Mickelson. That was kind of an interesting story, actually. He was doing a few classes at his studio at that time. And actually at that time, Dave from Zen Glass was working over there with him in his shop. That's where he got his start. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I called him. I was really wanting to study with him. His work was, he and Santini and Cesare were probably my three biggest sort of influences at that point outside of the pipe world as far as just the artistic scene. And I was loving his sandblasting and oil painting and the sand carving, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, I called him and I said, I felt like a weak link at the Snotty class for everybody else. And so as I kind of got better or what have you, I realized that I wanted to go to a class and not be held up by anybody else either. I just wanted to go in with my list of questions and start at the top and end at the end, And luckily he was down with that. And so I did a 2-day one-on-one class with him, just sort of touching every topic that I wanted to cover. It was very open, I directed the class more or less, and it worked out really well. He seemed to enjoy it. I enjoyed it. We both had a good time, and I learned a lot. But then I've also done a class with Santini at Flametree up in Atlanta.
Nice.
I used to do some classes for them and stuff, and just became they're very dear friends, and so I like to go up there every now and again and teach. And but I went up there to take his class. It's been several years ago now, but just had a blast. He's a really fun teacher. But those are really the only formal classes I've had. But I never say self-taught because none of us are really self-taught. I mean, yes, I figured a bunch of stuff out on my own, but usually I had a little bit of direction, even if it was just, from someone's mouth or what have you. Like I met some of the Glassworks Parks guys at the first Bonnaroo, and they were just so kind to kick knowledge down and just, what do you want to know? We'll spill it, and just, it was really cool. So I went home and I tried a bunch of stuff, and yes, I did a bunch of trial and error, but it was based on some things that they had told me to get me started in the right direction, So yeah. I hesitate to say self-taught, but I've taken 3 formal classes, and then I've been, given knowledge by many of the great glass blowers out there just through various channels, but have been very blessed to hang out and get some stuff from some of the best out there.
Yeah,
other amazing. Than that, that's about it.
Right on. Yeah, it's on the the idea of sharing knowledge. I remember when I was first doing inside outs and trying to figure out how not to burn my hand, and because I kept, my blowpipe was open all the way through, and I'm like, why am I still burning myself? Like I was thinking of like the physics of it and like the science of why it's doing it, and I understood, but I was like, what the fuck am I doing wrong? And kids came in town that were some glass artists that I had met doing the Renaissance Festival at the time, and they came by the house and we hung out a little bit, and they were watching me work, and he's like, try this, and it was just wadding up a piece of tissue and shoving it in the fucking opening of the blowpipe.
Yep.
To seal it off, and I was like, oh my god, dude, I feel like a dumbass.
Life changing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it changed that, right? One little small thing, bro, changed everything for me.
Yeah.
At that
you could
time.
Be in the cup for more than a second then.
Yeah, it was amazing. Like, I mean, just the ability to then move forward with my inside outs, to then learning how to constrict glass and make it thicker than I wanted to make it. And, like the whole process of it all was like, it was such an important milestone, I guess, for myself. I consider myself to be self-taught in a sense because a lot of what I've learned, I've had to figure out myself.
Mm-hmm.
I've just recently taken classes over the past 2 years. But before that, I mean, it was a lot of, trial and error and cuts and burns and just going to shops and looking at stuff on the shelf and just trying to reverse engineer it in my head or draw pictures and, all that good stuff. But I do agree, it's easy to throw around the term self-taught, but I still use it because when I'm like at Disney, for instance, people are like, "Oh, did you go to school for this?" I'm like, "No, I'm self-taught." It's like kind of the generic, easiest way to answer the question while I'm trying to focus on my work.
Yeah, and it's fair. It's definitely fair. Even just listening to folks that I've taken, I forget people or what have you, but there was another guy named Jameis. I'm not even sure if he still blows glass or not. This was out in California after the Snoddy class. One of the guys that I took the class with and I really hit it off, and we became friends and hung out outside of the class after that or what have you. And he brought this guy that he was working with down one weekend and stayed at my house. And he made this piece out in my shop, and it had, spiral work. It was all inside out line work at that time, but it had spirals and different, raked flower patterns and things like that. Really beautiful. I wish I still had it. So there have been people, throughout the years like that too. If you just sit and watch someone or whatever, even if it wasn't a quote unquote class or what have you, you're always learning. But yeah, it's a lot of, I have thrown a lot of stuff in the garbage trying to figure things out. That's for sure.
Yeah. Have you gotten into taking advantage of YouTube or any of the online classes at all?
Not really. I have been just so sort of focused. I really should do more research and things like that, but I have a family now, and it seems like the time that I do have during the day, I really need to be on the torch, and it seems to get eaten up as it is with Instagram or whatever it is, trying to get your name out there, show off the new pieces, taking photos, all of that kind of stuff. I'm sort of the one-man team around here. So between everything that's required sort of for work now, and then actually getting to spend a little time with my family as well, I don't have a lot of extra time to just sit and do things or watch videos for an hour or two or whatever. I'm sort of an early to bed, early to rise guy nowadays. It's funny, I've been falling asleep on the couch at like 9:30. My wife is calling me old, but
oh, that's hilarious. I do the same shit.
Yeah, man, it is what it is.
Yeah, you gotta, like, my goal lately has been to be in bed by 10.
Nice.
Because I got to. I mean, I just know myself physically, and when my brain works, I got to be in bed by 10. But like today, I'd be up at 5:30 to get my kids to school on time. So it just depends. But it'd be nice if I can do that every fucking day, to get up at 5:30 every single day and just, get my grind going early. But then now with my Disney gig back again, going full time, I'm there at 10 to 10. Don't get home till sometimes midnight, depending on traffic. And
wow.
Then I'm not actually asleep until maybe like 1:30. So it helps to have my fun at home to kind of unwind and help me get to sleep a little quicker. But
yeah.
But even then, I'm all wound up from all the crazy magic from the day and all the whatever. But I'm also extremely worn out too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel you there, man. Yeah, I work at home, so it's all kind of here. And when I'm off, I just walk into the house, and it's good and bad. It's easy to get distracted in that sort of sense. But
yeah, it's a good transition, because I was wanting to ask you about that. How your setup is at home?
Yeah, it is. It's always greener on the other side. There are things that I really enjoy about working at home. I am kind of one of those people who are really sort of set in my ways, such as I like a clean shop. I like, there are just certain things that really help me make better work or feel more comfortable or whatever it is, even down to music choices or whatever. It's nice to be able to work in your own shop and do your own thing at your own pace and your own time. But you don't get that spark of creativity or camaraderie or anything else that you get from working with other people around you all the time. So I've been in both situations many times, and I enjoy things about both, and I dislike things about both. So if I had my rathers, I would have a shop here in town with a lot of people that I could go to 3 days a week or something, and work at my house 2 days a week or something to get a little bit of both of those. But the closest place for that really is kind of over in St. Pete, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just not feasible to trek across the bridge 3 times a week or whatever. But I do try to get over there and hang out with those guys as much as possible and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good thing. I like it here at home. I've got a nice little setup for it. And,
Do you have a garage or like a little shed or something you're in?
yeah, it's a separate garage that's out back, and so yeah, it's a little freestanding building. And I assume whoever lived here before worked on cars or something like that. But
Yeah.
it's a little bigger than a one car. You could only fit one car in it, but it's a little bigger than a typical one car garage. So it really works out well. I'm able to drive my tanks back there and do all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I enjoy it. But most of my studios have been by myself. But like I say, when you work with other people, you definitely get, like I say, it's the goods and the bads. There
Yeah,
are days
yeah.
you might come in and gangster rap is booming on the radio, and you're like, man, I really wanted some chill music this morning, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
There's some Kitaro going on or something. You're like, dude, I want some NWA right now. I need to wake up,
Yeah.
whatever it is. So there are those little things that you have to deal with when you're working with other people, but the trade-off is that you do get that, I don't know, that creativity bump and that uh, sense of being into the moment and not necessarily getting distracted so easy and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I know myself. Like when I first met Josh and Dave, I got into the studio with those guys, and it was definitely a big change for myself. Getting around the crew, like you're saying. We'd be in there at 3 a.m. We'd all have our little safety breaks and go back to the torch, and it was incredible the energy that we would create in there. We'd all be in there, had the music jamming so loud you can't hear yourself thinking. And we'd like just kind of glance over at each other and we'd smile and we just understood what was going on.
Right.
But then I'd get back home and it was like I'd get into my silence, into my own thing, and it was like, oh, I like this too. So it was kind of nice to have the ability to have both, but it's more of a pain in the ass to have to transport your shit back and forth all the time,
Yeah.
more than anything. But then you start thinking about your personal overhead compared to paying rent somewhere else, and you got to balance it out and how much time you put in. Like there's a lot of numbers you got to kind of crunch. It's just financially to see if it's even worth it. But then in the long run, again, you get the creative spirit going. Financially for yourself, it may pay dividends down the road.
Absolutely.
Maybe not right away.
Yeah,
So
when we bought this house, we bought it, specifically because we liked the area, the school it was around, all that sort of stuff as well. But also because it did have this shop and was zoned where I could work and that sort of thing. So, we factored all of that stuff into our what was going to be our every month rent and all of that sort of stuff. We just figured that it was better to go that route than to try and find a warehouse space or something like that and be paying a mortgage and that and everything else. And so this just worked out better for us financially and that sort of thing. But
yeah, it's
I
beneficial.
do miss working with some other people from time to time for sure.
Yeah, we'll have to get together sometime here in the near future.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. 'Cause I got my space now, so it's definitely nice to have some room to breathe. After being in my garage for a bit.
Yeah.
Getting
Yeah,
out.
when I built it out, I was going to build it initially for 2 spaces, and I just didn't. I don't know. It just didn't happen. I wasn't ready for all that at that moment, but I needed my shop built, and so I just finished it up, so that I could work in there.
Mhm.
And I really would like to expand it to at least 2 people, because there are a lot of people who are around here now that. Here locally, and people who travel through and that sort of thing. It's gotten to be where there's enough folks that I would like to sit down with, that it would be nice to have 2 spaces here in my studio.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Hell yeah. So in terms of like your lines of work through the years, have you found like specifically things that have influenced your work, like besides other artists maybe you're being around, like environmental, being here in Florida? A lot of us tend to go towards the ocean stuff,
Right.
But your work's what I've noticed with your work is you've always, locally wise, you've been a little bit different than everybody else. You started getting into electroforming stuff and your reversal work and the clear work you're doing. There's a lot of fun things, and then you're getting into your sculptural stuff. Like when we all had that show, the first Halloween show, the pipe show over at the oh, what the hell was that play? The Collective, I guess it was.
Oh, yes, yes.
So like that was a cool thing to be a part of that. Like the first pipe show in the area, type of thing.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
so what has been kind of the influences into your lines as through the years have progressed?
Um, it really kind of comes from everywhere. The obviously the we'll just start at the beginning. Most of my influence came from the snotty camp in the beginning, so I was really heavily influenced by all kinds of fuming techniques and tricks in that sort of sense. And when I went there, first person I met at Snodgrass's place was Bob, and then he had to step out for a minute, and Brian Padilla was there, and so we got to hang out, and I got to see a bunch of his work, and just so I just had these really heavy hitters of serious fume technique right off the bat. To sort of, spur what I was creating. So I did a lot of different fume work, a lot of multi-layering, and just trying to get a little bit different effect. Always trying to get something as nice as Snotty's fume work, and it's pretty much impossible. His stuff just he's the magic man, But
Yeah.
but there was that in the beginning, and then through meeting Jason and Ease and Eli and Gasp and all those folks at Bonnaroo that year, that really brought spirals into my thing. So that was less environment and more people. That kind of spurred that, and of course, like I say, they were just so generous with knowledge. And I had brought a big sculptural piece that I had made with Michael Stamey, which you may be familiar with him. He worked at Disney for a little while. He was a very, very talented glass cutter that worked for Swarovski for a while.
Yep.
We had done these big pieces together, and so when I showed up, I had my case of production and a few nicer pieces, but I had this big, cool sculptural piece, and it was kind of neat because I'll never forget this. I came out with this piece, and Jason Lee, someone who obviously we were all looking up to at that point, he looks over and says, "Man, where have you been hiding?" And I felt so good, at that moment. This was early in my career, so
Hell yeah.
it's not tooting my own horn. I didn't deserve accolade at that point, but it made me feel real good, And we
Yeah, I
just sort
bet.
of hit it off, and so he, shared techniques and all that sort of stuff, and I soaked it up and went home and really started working on that and refining, cleaning everything up. Like I say, I've always been real kind of anal retentive about everything, and so that went into that line work as well, and just started really fine tuning and the mechanics of it all and everything, and putting those together, and then started from there doing rewigs and putting more spirals inside of spirals and all the things that everybody was doing at that point during the old glasspipes.org days. And from there, it started going more into sculptural kind of skull work. I've always been the first job I ever wanted to have. I was probably 5 years old, maybe. I wanted to do makeup for horror movies. That was just something that I was really into. I bought all the old Fangoria magazines and all
Hell
that
yeah.
kind of stuff. And my parents were cool enough to let me watch some of those things. My dad would sit there with the remote on the VCR so that he could zip through any parts with naked chicks or whatever was always in the old slasher movies.
Yeah, yeah.
He would try and zip through, but somehow they knew that I was, knew that it was all fake and really just wanted to learn how to do this stuff. And so one of the artists I'm most drawn to is probably Ghost, just because he really touches on that creepy. His stuff looks like it could be straight out of a Fangoria magazine. So he's one of my favorite artists for sure. But I had been looking at his stuff and then sort of, getting back into the slasher films and that kind of stuff. And so I started doing skull work and really enjoyed those and was doing quite a bit of those. And then I kind of dropped off of glass for a little bit just because it got really difficult to make a living around here for a while. You just had more and more. This was really before the big kind of heady wave started happening here. You just kept running into more and more of that. What do you got for $5?
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't support the family anymore. So I went and did construction again for a few years and ended up coming back to it. And before I came back to it, actually, this was before I left to do construction. I was sitting up one night, kind of flipping through the channels, and Ed Harris movie for Jackson Pollock came on, and I caught, I don't know, the last 30 minutes of it or whatever. And I was familiar with his work anyway, but just kind of watching that, I went back and rewatched it, and it just sort of inspired me, that whole kind of controlled chaos that he was able to get through his work, something to where it was more than just splattering it. You could detect emotion and feeling, and or at least I could, out of that stuff. And so I wanted to kind of put that into glass. And so I started working and experimenting with that and getting it to where it would look less like just a random spin trail or something like that, and really more like splatter uh, paint onto glass. And so I started working with that, and then ended up going to construction. And whenever I came back, I really sort of dove into that wholeheartedly. I kind of went right back into that style, and that's more or less what I've been doing ever since. Um, but so that one was inspired by random late night TV watching.
Hell yeah.
And I just, like I say, I went that whole same time period. I got my first drum set whenever I was 5 years old. I got my first guitar in, I don't know, middle school, something like that. I've played music my whole life. That's kind of been my thing. And really into a lot of the same things that we're all into, Fish and the Grateful Dead and all of those sorts of things. But I also later in life started really diving into Delta blues, and pretty much just like, one older black cat with an acoustic guitar and him, and just that. And so your Mance Linscombs, Fred McDowell's, Lightning Hopkins, like all of these kinds of people really started influencing my music. And so I went from trying to learn Frank Zappa licks and all of these different technical things to just stripping it all away to the bare essence and going that route. And that's sort of what the Jackson Pollock type style helped me do with glass as well. I went from being this technician of making sure each spiral tip lined up perfectly, and like I say, seeing how many you could fit into one spiral, and then rewigging that, and then reversing the axis on that, and just all of these technical things. I wanted to put them to the side. Not that I would never bring them back out, but for the time being, I wanted to put them to the side and strip my glass down to the bare essence and just what looks pleasant to me and what I enjoy looking at, and taking it out of the how many hours did this take you? How, like, can everybody else in the world do this? Is it, so technically challenging that people are going to stare at it for? I just didn't care about that stuff anymore. I just said, what looks pretty to me? What do I enjoy looking at? And what is fun for me to make? And so that's why I've stuck with this particular style for so long, because it hasn't gotten old yet. But I do bounce around quite a bit. I've even started changing it up some, mixing it with my older multi-layer fume technique. I've been trying to kind of pull the old tricks out and add them to the new things and just keep it interesting. But like you say, with the electroforming and things, I get bored very easy, and that's probably not a good thing for a glass blower, because like you say, you really have to find one thing, make it your own, and just work on that and work on that and work on that. But I really do kind of tend to get bored very easy. So I bounce around a lot. We've had this whole long conversation. I may be doing something totally different next week, and that may be my new thing.
Yeah.
I can't find a quote unquote shtick, I guess, to stick with. And it could be detrimental to me, but it keeps my sanity as well. So I'm not, making the same thing over and over. And as soon as I get bored with this, I'll be on to something else, but for right now, I'm really loving it, and I'm able to add it to other things. And I'm about to start doing some collabs with some interesting folks out there on using this particular pattern and stuff that I'm excited about.
Nice. Hell yeah.
So hopefully that'll help it sort of morph into something as well, and I'll draw inspiration from those things. But
yeah, and I think on that same lines of bouncing around, it's not always necessarily a bad thing, because if you get yourself established, you could actually create more business and profits for yourself by having scarce lines like that. Like, you do a line and it becomes more valuable because you're not making a lot of them. So because of, the whole quantity, or the, like supply and demand kind of concept, I guess, if anything,
I think that way, and that makes logical sense. And if you watch Antiques Roadshow or something like that, that is the way of things. but that's not necessarily so with the market right now.
Right.
It's just it's hard to find that thing. You almost have to find a thing and beat it like a dead horse at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But but yeah, I won't ever be that cat. I get too bored with things too easy. I have to be able to sort of just move with the flow. I don't ever want to be pigeonholed to one thing or one style or one whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know that the Jackson Pollock stuff reminds me. There was a documentary on Netflix. I can't remember what the hell it's called. I have to look it up and put the link on the show notes. But it got into Jackson Pollock's artwork and the mathematical stuff that was involved. Like they were actually able to find that his work, as chaotic as and crazy as it was, there was so much deliberation that he was doing to do specific lines and techniques and patterns in the way that he moved across his canvases, that they were able to scan these things and make a three-dimensional kind of perspective of the layering of his work to really show you how he built his glass, but his paintings and his artwork up to where it was actually very deliberate with what he was doing, as chaotic as it looked, and as the whole random splatter bullshit. But they actually created a machine that was able to paint that same kind of splatter tech, and they were trying to recreate his work based on the math that they were finding in his paintings. It was really fascinating stuff, and they were.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I would love to though.
Yeah, and they were able to to almost completely recreate a couple of his works, and he had a couple that were like 20 feet long by like 10 feet tall, like these huge, big triptychs and crazy things he was doing. That with this robotic painter thing that they came up with, they were able to recreate that again based on the mathematical science that they were able to find. It was really fascinating, getting into that stuff.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. That's what I mean though by the controlled chaos.
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
definitely, when you look at it, it is just, to me, it's pleasing to my eye, but just it's a splattered mess.
I love it, dude. I think it looks awesome.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous. I mean, and being the first, there's something to be said for being the first guy to be ballsy enough to step outside of kind of like what we were talking about before. Just stepping outside of that, making neat scenery or very realistic portraits, or what he just said, dude, I'm just going to do what feels good to me and what looks nice to my eye, and I hope that people enjoy it and come along for the ride. And if they don't, it doesn't bother me because it's in my head and it's got to come out. And, it's not for them, it's for me.
Yeah.
And so, I try to stick with that with my glass work. I try to remember that I hope people enjoy this. I hope they come along, but I'm making this for me. It's in my head. It's got to come out. And however it is, And,
yeah.
Luckily, people have enjoyed it. So
yeah, absolutely, dude. I love it. When I first started seeing you doing them, I'm like, damn, this is such a cool thing. Because like I've done that kind of work, but I haven't done it with intention of how you've done it. I've done it more of the wrap and rake, multiple layers of color, type of thing.
Yeah.
But to do it in that style, and it's interesting, using the whole controlled chaos, because glass, in a sense, is controlled chaos. It's like we try to control it, and then as soon as you try to control it too much, it cuts and burns you.
Yeah, it puts you in your place real quick.
Yeah, big time. And then you go along, to past glass artists and generational wise, who have been influenced by Jackson Pollock. Dale Chihuly is the first person that comes to mind. Yep. And he's this, he's a brand more than anything nowadays. But if you go back and look at his conceptual paintings that he did, was all inspired. His technique he uses was inspired from Jackson Pollock. I mean, hell, Chihuly named his son Jackson.
I don't know. I guess that's a credit to Jackson's work. That he does inspire so many people, and across sort of all mediums, and even within the same mediums.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's fun stuff for sure, man. I just like the way that it looks. I enjoy, like I say, I was so much about being a technician for so long that it's really fun to just be organic, and that's really much more true to the old Venetian style and things like that. There was a lot of organic type of feeling to the traditional glass work and that sort of stuff. I mean, there was definitely a technical side of it as well, but there's a lot of organic things that happen in the way they work. So it's more fun for me right now to just see what happens. And they don't all turn out great. There are times where that's too much of that, or whatever. Again, because it is so sporadic and kind of whatever happens happens. They don't always end up as you want them to, but
Yeah.
that's part of the fun of it as well.
Do you find like with like recently, I mean, you know how it was when we started. We had like 6 colors to work with, and now that we have like 5,000 fucking colors, it's almost overwhelming at times. But do you find like with the ability of having such a broad choice of color now, that coming up with these ideas, these your splatter painted in a sense, work, are you finding it to be even more fun to be able to work and try and experiment with different colors and what works with what and what doesn't, and that trial and error?
Yeah, somewhat. Because of the technique that I use to create that, there are a lot of colors that just don't lend themselves to that.
Mm-hmm.
Either they wash out too much when they get small stringer, size, or even smaller than that, or what have you, or certain colors will want to boil more easy, or whatever it is. There are certain colors that just make that particularly difficult, or not as clean as you would hope it would be each time. So I tend to stay away from them. So more of my, I guess, color experimentation has been coming through layering. I like to do a lot of mixing my own colors. I've been playing with that quite a bit the last few years. And it's funny, most of the colors that I was all stoked that I had kind of, I had something like, for instance, before there was purple rain or what have you, I had a purple rainish type color through mixing, a lot of clear down with certain purples and things like that. And as soon as you sort of get it down, you're like, all right, cool, man. Look, I got this transparent purple. The next day, there's like 3 transparent purples on the market. Crap.
Yeah. I
Back
know
to
what
the
you mean.
drawing board. Okay, look, I've got this thing. It's like a transparency orange. Oh, there's Tangy. Okay, next.
Yep.
So it's been sort of this, I've kind of stopped racing to try and do the next thing because it's all coming, faster than you can really keep up with. But even that, uh, it's a struggle, to be honest. I have a hard time, and I deal with this pretty much every day with every piece I make or whatever. I have a hard time finding that original feeling thing that is uniquely me. And I think it's getting harder for other glass blowers to do that same thing. And I think that you see that through, and I put myself in this category. I'm not calling anybody out. I'm right there with everybody else. We're all doing fades right now, or we're all doing,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like we all kind of jump on the next thing. Not that we haven't thought about doing it before, or that it's all of a sudden, oh, this is the cool thing, so I have to try it. Maybe we just really like it and we're inspired by that and we want to try it ourselves, or what have you. It can all be honest intentions.
Mm-hmm.
But it just feels harder and harder to find those original things. And so that's part of what the color mixing was doing. It was, if I'm going to do some things that are similar to other people, or not, it's this one product and this is easily identifiable as me or what have you, then I would go with making colors that were easily identifiable as me. And now that that's kind of not there, I've been working on some other ideas, trying to again just change up the Pollock style to the point where it's more uniquely me, or my take on that idea, or that sort of thing. And so I have been playing a lot with colors in that sense. But no, I haven't seen that it has changed my creativity or that sort of thing. It's given me a few new things to play with and cut down some prep time, so I don't have to sit and mix all of these things.
Yeah, exactly.
But so there is that kind of effect from it. But I don't know that it's spurred my, I don't know if it's made me any more creative, or doing anything any differently. But I certainly do. I'm a purple guy. I love purple. And I remember when I first started, there was talk then about coming up with a good purple, and it never happened. And so that's one of those things that we've all been waiting for years and years. And now you got several different shades of purple, and transparents and opaques. And so I am really stoked about that. So there are things that I'm very excited are in the color palette now, and I probably overuse them because I waited so long. It seems like everything now is green and purple from me, but what can I say? Those are, two of my favorite colors together. So
Yeah, it's a great combination. Unfortunately, I think the Joker has kind of created this stigma for the color, but I personally myself, I love the combination, the green and purples.
yeah,
It's rad. Looks great, especially like you're saying, like a purple rain with like a slime, or like with like a cobalt, in between the two to kind of separate them, or whatever.
yep,
It's a lot of fun. But it's interesting too is getting into the more of the transparent colors. I find them almost more difficult to work with than cadmium colors in terms of how stiff they are. Like it looks like like amber purples and like the North Star yellows, they're transparencies, and they work like fucking butter. But then you get
yep,
into the purple rains and the slimes and these guys, it's like they're so stiff. And
yeah.
it's a weird kind of thing with the way the color works.
Well, and it all depends on what you're doing with it, but yeah, they definitely are, and same goes for Illuminati and all these different
Mm-hmm.
things that look like just your standard transparent. They're going to melt down real smooth, and they're not. But yeah, I still do all of the old school kind of ways for like making colored tubing. I'll stripe it down a clear tube and then melt that in, and then stripe that down with clear rod and then melt that in and pull that out, that sort of thing. And those techniques seem to lend themselves to those stiffer colors. It
Yeah.
doesn't, not necessarily watering it down, but you find ways to work with them that it works.
Yeah, I work my color the same way, dude. Like I do vac stacks every once in a while, but I don't know. There's something about drawing color down a tube. I have always enjoyed it. It's
Well,
just
it's a totally different effect. I'm sure I'll have people who will, you know, either love or hate this, but I've never done a vac stack. I don't have anything against them necessarily, but I just think that there is a different look when you put two sections together that have been made in that, the original way, like I'm talking about, versus the vac stack. There
Mhm.
is a depth. Um, to the vac stack, and the other way looks more painted on the surface.
Correct.
So when you
Yeah.
put two sections together, for me, it just tends to look a little cleaner and a little better the other way. But there are people who, don't get me wrong, there are people who rock those vac stacks and they look amazing and all of that. But for me personally, I like the look of the other better.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I like working, and I prefer the transparencies. Like I'll even water down some opaque colors. Like I've done tube encasements or whatever you want, rod encasement over a tube, and then coat it, like you're saying, coat it in clear, and then coat that in clear even again. Just like
Yep.
keep watering the shit down, and it gives you kind of an ability to play with your color compared to where vac stacks it's not that you're limited, but you kind of are in some
Yeah.
areas. You know.
Well, and those are easier for certain other colors, like Illuminati or something that wants to boil real easy or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Vac stacks are probably a much I don't want to say easier because it's not easier, but less headache type of way to go. Um, but yeah, I don't know, just never done that. So, like I say, nothing that I'm not against it. I would totally try one. I just haven't. The other way works for me. It's at all if it ain't broke, I guess.
So where'd your glass name come from?
It actually came from one of my buddies back in the day. I used to call him, and every time you would call him, he'd answer the phone. "What's up, DaddyO?" And so this was back during the days of having like 20 people in your house at all times
Mm-hmm.
and just the party house, all that kind of stuff. And I would say it back to him, "Hey, nothing. What's up, Daddy-O?" And my friends would hear that. And so eventually people just started saying, "Hey, Daddy-O," things like that. And it wasn't like, don't get me wrong, that wasn't like a nickname that stuck or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
it was enough people that when I was trying to come up with a name, because, when we started, this was again before the internet, before you were trying to kind of stay in the shadows
Yeah.
because there were still people who wanted, to shut you down. So you weren't necessarily wanting to put your name out there. So I was trying to come up with a surname to work under, and that's just what popped in my head, and that's what I went with, and it's just stuck.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works,
So
man.
it's not some old childhood name or anything. It's just one of my buddies used to always answer the phone that way, and
Hell yeah.
people heard me say it back, and it just stuck.
Nice. It was reminding me the other day. I call my dad DaddyO just through text messaging and stuff. And
Hmm.
I was saving your contact in my phone, and I started putting in DaddyO, and my dad's phone number comes up. I'm like, oh yeah, I can't do that. So it's kind of funny. Good
Yeah.
shit. So Let's go ahead and take a quick break to thank our sponsors, and then we'll come back, and it'll be time for us to crash the kiln.
Cool.
This episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show is sponsored by Wise Guy Media, a new company dedicated to showcasing the talents and offerings of their customers through podcasting, eye-catching graphics, logo, and customized web design. Established in 2015, Wise Guy Media is continuing to push the elements of web and logo design with outside-of-the-box ideas and up-to-date graphic generating programs. Whether you want to launch your own podcast, need a website, or a new logo for your brand, they have all your needs covered to promote yourself and get your brand recognized in your industry. All right, cool. All right, man, we are back. And so the Crash in the Kiln round consists of around 6 questions, and you can give me a 30 to 60-second answer. You can also expound upon them if you'd like a little bit longer, which usually happens. And we'll go from there, man. So the first question I always like to ask, which is definitely a tough one, if you could work with any living glass artist that you haven't worked with before, who is it and why?
Yeah, it's a long laundry list, but I would have to say they're at the very top. You know, there is a handful, but probably at the top would be Cesare. I guess it's a little different. That's the top artist. Piper-wise, maybe Jason Lee, probably.
Okay.
So there's a dual answer for you.
Hell yeah. Yeah, both those guys myself, dude. I'd love to work with both of them.
Yeah, either or.
Hell yeah. So what are your top 5 favorite colors in glass, besides purple and green?
That's it. Those are my favorites. I'm a cool color guy. I always have. I do like using, like, you know, fiery type colors on certain things, but as far as just the stuff that I immediately pick up and go with, I love the purples, greens, pinks, blues, you know, that type of thing. As far as specific colors, Illuminati, I'm pretty addicted to right now with just about everything. I love intense blue-green, which doesn't get a lot of love out there, but it's a really great color that gives lots of different striations and works really well with fuming and that sort of thing. I love the Stardusts. Those are fun to work with, the green and blue Stardust. But typically, as far as what's usually in my color palette, I use a lot of jet black, a lot of purple lollipop, a lot of Illuminati, blues, like I say, any of the cobalts. I do a lot of my own mixing, my cobalt. So, but I love a good transparent blue. So yeah, there you go. Mostly cool colors. Blues, greens, purples, pinks, that kind of thing.
Hell yeah. If you could describe the sound of glass cracking in one word, what is it?
Tink.
Perfect. What's your worst injury in the studio?
I've been pretty fortunate. Probably the worst one was early on. My hair was very long at that point, and I had a piece on a punty, and my hair fell in my face, and I went to wipe it to the side, and whenever I did, the tender part of your forearm got right on this hot piece that I was working on and imprinted itself there in my forearm. Somehow I don't have any scarring or anything, but yeah, that was a pretty gnarly one, but it taught me quick.
Dude, I did that twice on stage at Disney on 2 different occasions. Like, so I ripping apart like some I think it was like 25 mil rod, and I would rip them in thirds, so the middle section I ripped off, both ends were hot as shit. And when I go to place it down, I would have like the other end of the rod on my forearm, you know. And at both occasions, I touched that hot shit part on my forearm, so I looked like fucking Kung Fu Master picking up the hot pots with my forearms. And I've still got like brown scars on my forearms from those spots. You know, fortunately, when the people saw me do it, they didn't realize I did it, but it was like, it's a tender spot, man. It sucks.
My friend, the worst one I've heard about, my friend that taught me how to blow glass, his girlfriend, a spoon fell off of a punty, and her natural reaction was to grab it, and she caught it, and she said that she had to shake her hand twice to get it to unstick from her hand. So yeah, that was brutal.
Jesus. Yeah, I've been there before, man. Just picking up hot rods. It sucks.
Yeah.
Early on, I've learned that lesson, though. First time, I learned the lesson. Thank God.
Yeah. That's pretty much the first thing I teach. Anything hot goes away from you.
Yeah, man. I teach hot and glass and cold glass look the same. I got so many employees at Disney, they want to like, oh, what's this on your bench? I'm like, dude, don't ever do that because that shit could be 5,000 degrees right now and you would have no idea.
That's right. And I wouldn't cry for you.
Yeah, hell no. I've already warned you. So in the shop, do you watch TV, listen to the radio, or do you do both?
No, I listen to music. I would love to have a TV, but I feel like that would be a bit distracting for maybe it wouldn't. I don't know, but yeah, I'm music a lot. But I also like to work in dead silence too. It just depends on the day.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, same here. I would say with the TV thing myself, I prefer both. I'd like to watch movies that I've seen before, so I kind of watch it in my head, like more listening to it, maybe glance. But I have found that it's on the long nights that I've worked by myself, it definitely would get me through the nights. Yeah, having like a movie, or I would do like a Pirates of Caribbean marathon. Watch all at the time. There was 3 of them. Now there's like 10 of them or whatever. Silly. So let's see. Yeah, man. So I guess from there, the last and final question, which is always a fun one too. If you were stranded on an island, and this could be an island of your sorts, deserted, full of naked chicks, or resort, however you want to have it, and it had a glass studio on there that you had to work in, and they supplied your gases, a kiln, and your torch, what 5 items would you bring?
Well, are they supplying glass as well?
Nope.
I don't know.
No glass.
Well, I guess, is this if I say I wanted 44 tubing, would I get it for the whole time I'm there, or am I getting one case? Or...
You could bring as much glass as you want. Rashawn Jones, the first guy answered, he said he brought a pallet of glass.
All right, there you go. Well, that would be a good answer for sure. I would definitely have to have some 44. Yeah, a palette of color would be good. I do pretty good with making my tools last. I've been using many of the same tools for the last 16 years, so I don't think I need too many of those, but tons of color and tons of clear, so that if I ever get bored, I can mix and kind of make my own color.
Oh, yeah. At least you got 3 more specifics.
An iPod, full. And then I would probably need 2 sets of glasses because I wear prescription glasses. And knowing me, the first day I got there, I would sit on them or something, and then I would be stuck there forever, not being able to see anything. So,
hell yeah. Well, what other kind of glasses would you need? Are your prescriptions DaddyO's?
Yeah.
Oh, fucking awesome. Okay, so on the side note, what'd those cost you? Because I need to get a pair.
I have the old AGW 286, and I actually need to upgrade because they don't make nose pieces for them anymore. So I look like Steve Urkel. I've got tape going on the centerpiece because my nose piece is gone. It keeps it from digging in my nose. But I want to say those were around $450.
Okay, that's about what I thought, like $400 to $500.
Exactly. But I believe that Orleans is doing something where if you have prescriptions and you send them in, like they'll switch you over for, I don't know, $200 or something like that. So I don't think I have to spend the $500 again.
Nice.
Yeah, so we'll see, but it's about time for some new ones. But I really love those sport goggle style frames. I have actually had times where a little piece of hot glass or something will fly up and go to the side because the sport goggle wraps around. And had I been wearing just regular glasses, it would have been able to sneak through towards my eye. So I'll probably stick with that style. Yeah. It's not the coolest looking thing, but it's saved my eyes once or twice. So it's a fair trade.
Yeah, awesome. Well, before we let you go, dude, if you want to give us any parting piece of advice for all the glass artists out there, and then also where we can find you out there in the world of cyberspace.
Well, I suppose just taking it all full circle, my biggest piece of advice for anyone just kind of starting out or whatever would be to practice those fundamentals, to work on the spoons, to work on the perfect bowl holes, to never be satisfied if it's a little janky. Don't just move on to the next, fix it, because there will be times where you've got $1,000 piece and something happens and you have to fix something. And if you haven't built those skills up to be able to do that, then chances are you're going to lose that piece too. So, learning to fix a spoon at $10 or whatever is a lot better than not having the tools you need to fix $1,000 piece. So That's what I would say. Work on the fundamentals, get those down, never be satisfied, make it perfect. And then I would steal a piece of advice that came from Ray Olson. He gave this to my friend Lance that runs Flametree Glass. Lance had asked him what his best piece of advice was, and he said, always listen to that little voice in your head. And I can't tell you how many times I have had a piece out of the kiln and said, I'm going to put one more marble on. I should probably no, I'll be good. Crack.
Mm-hmm.
Or, those kinds of things. Like, once you've worked with it a while, that little voice in your head that's what you need to be listening to. So those are my two pieces of advice. Work the fundamentals and always listen to that little voice in your head.
Hell yeah. And then where can we find you out there in cyberspace?
I'm on Instagram under @DaddyO Glass, DaddyOGlass. And then I have a Facebook page as well, DaddyO Glass, but I'm not on there very much, to be honest. Most of my online stuff is happening on Instagram.
Hell yeah. You have like an Etsy or a Big Cartel or anything like that?
I have a Big Cartel. The link is in my bio there on Instagram. And usually I'll announce when I put stuff up there. I don't have things on it all the time. It's usually a Big Cartel drop or something like that I'll do. But yeah, the link is there on Instagram.
Sweet. Hell yeah. And I'll have all this on the show notes for everybody as well.
Awesome.
So, hell yeah, man. Well, again, it was an honor and a pleasure to have you on here and sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to get more of the Florida Glass guys on here. I got Josh and Dave coming on soon, too, so it'd be fun to have those guys on.
Yeah, they're old school here for Florida, too, and they've been doing lots of great things. I mean, a good portion of what is happening in this area for all kinds of glass, they've been involved in one way or another. So yeah. I'm glad to hear you'll have them on. They're good dudes.
Yeah, talk about Pendant Palooza and all that good stuff coming up.
Very nice. Yep, I'll be there. You coming?
Oh, yeah, I'll be there. Yep.
Nice.
Absolutely. Hell yeah, man. Look forward to it. So, all right, hope you all enjoyed this episode and this interview with Travis, Mr. DaddyO, and we will see you guys on the next episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show. Take it easy. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show. If you have any questions, comments, or remarks, please leave them in the show notes page area where it says comments. We'll see you soon. Have a wise night.